Alright, so can you really make your own hard wax oil finish at home? Let's find out. So today on Nostalgia Maker, I'm going to be showing you how you can make your own hard wax oil finish. Kind of, maybe, I think. Well, okay, let me explain. So last few years, I've been making my own custom finish by combining three main ingredients: oiled linseed oil, finishing paste, and oil-based polyurethane. Now, does the combination of these three ingredients technically make a hard wax oil finish? Well, Google AI defines hard wax oil finishes as a blend of natural oils like linseed oil, wax, like finishing paste, and drying agents like the ones found in polyurethane. So yeah, I guess technically I have been making my own hard wax oil finish. I think. Maybe technically not. I don't know. You tell me. When I first started woodworking, I wasn't even aware of what a hard wax oil finish was. And at the time, I mainly just used oil-based polyurethane for most of my projects. Now, the short story is that one day I was low on polyurethane, and to save on money, I stretched the polyurethane with linseed oil and finishing wax. To my surprise, I ended up with a finish that was one, easy to apply, and two, left a relatively durable finish. I thought, wow, hey, this is great. I've come across something special here. Now, unfortunately, my eureka moment was short-lived when I came across YouTube videos about hard wax oil finishes, and specifically, actually, Lincoln Street Woodworks video. If you haven't seen it, it's probably, honestly, the best video out there comparing various hard wax oils. John, he does a great job in explaining the hype regarding hard wax oils, and of course, comparing the most popular brands, reviewing their cost, durability, safety, and appearance. And of course, I'll post a link of that video in the description. Now, after watching this video, I thought to myself, would it really be worth making my own hard wax oil finish? Could my custom mixture actually be comparable to regular brands, and is it actually more cost effective? Now, in previous videos, I've alluded to the fact that I have been making my own hard wax oil finish, and that has garnered requests in the comments for me to share my process. And the issue is that I've never really nailed down a recipe. I never really tested its durability. It's always been kind of an experiment so far. So my goal in this video is to create a finalized mixture that is comparable to other hard wax oils, and to see if it is any cheaper and therefore worth the effort in continuing to make it. To do this, I'm going to be making several individual quart-sized mixtures with varying measurements of these three ingredients. Then I will test their application, appearance, durability, and of course, in the end, see if it actually is more cost effective. I also want to take the time to say that I'm not really sure, and therefore I'm not claiming that I am doing anything necessarily new. I looked into it a little bit online, and most of what I could find were some examples of people cutting polyurethane with just boiled linseed oil. So, okay, yeah, sorry. Actually, I saw during editing, Workshop Companion came out with something similar like a month ago. I should have finished this video a lot earlier. Beat me to it. Well, kind of. He uses beeswax, carnauba wax, mineral spirits, and spar urethane and boiled linseed oil. Mine's a bit simpler then, I guess, and I guess I could argue mine has an easier application, but his mixture is great too. Workshop Companion is great. Link in the description. Okay, bye. If someone else can claim credit to this particular process, then fine. I want to share something that I find interesting and that has been helpful to me in my woodworking hobby. So let's get started. Woo! And here are the ingredients that I purchased. I only decided to get these brands because I could get them at Home Depot and Lowe's. I figured if anyone, at least in the United States, wanted to replicate this finish exactly, then I wanted to make sure that the same ingredients were readily accessible. All of these ingredients are also available on Amazon. I think the polyurethane is also available at Walmart. Now, I can't say how accessible these brands are outside of the US, though I'm sure that you can find some comparable substitutes. First in the lineup is Clean Strip Boiled Linseed Oil from Lowe's. Clean Strip Boiled Linseed Oil, or BLO, as I might refer to it, is about all I can find when it comes to BLO these days. Second, we have Mini Wax Paste Finishing Wax from Home Depot. I've just always preferred this finishing paste as opposed to other brands. And last but not least, Varathane Oil-Based Polyurethane from Home Depot. I decided on selecting semi-gloss instead of satin. Cutting poly with the other two ingredients will end up dulling the sheen to a satin-like finish anyways, and I would have selected gloss, but only semi-gloss was available at the time. So to keep track of my mixtures, I will be writing the percentages of each ingredient as well as the ounce measurements. One thing that you may notice from this first lid is that I'm not doing a true quart measurement. The cans will add up to 30 ounces instead of 32. It was just easier not having the cans completely full. For those outside of the United States, 30 ounces converts to 887.206 milliliters. Don't know why you guys have to complicate things. Though using the percentages alone will allow you to convert any of these mixtures fairly easily. It was pretty easy measuring these out. You just need your Wise Kitchen scale. And it's easiest if you zero out the scale after you add each ingredient. I end up making 5 samples, all ranging with more or less of the various ingredients. Now, as I'm measuring out the rest of these cans, I want to address some of the continuity issues that you will see or that you have seen in this video. This video has spanned several months, a lot because of testing and a lot because this is not my day job and life happens. Today, I'm in my new garage shop in Texas, and when I first started this video, as you see here, I was still in Arizona. Now, just so you're not confused, I don't have 2 garage shops, and my facial hair growth is not that volatile. Okay, so with that being said, now for probably the most controversial part of this video. I'm just assuming that I'm going to hear about safety stuff in the comments. Yes, you do have to heat up the mixture. For the mixture to be fully incorporated, you have to melt the finishing paste. Doing this is potentially hazardous for 2 main reasons: increase in vapors and combustibility. As far as vapors go, as you can see, I have a well-ventilated space with a fan assisting with the dispersal of the fumes. I am also using a respirator. Now please, do not do this in the house. These small camper stoves are a dime a dozen. Now regarding the combustible nature of these ingredients, the products themselves do say not to expose to direct flame. I myself am nervous about this, and so I take a few added measures. First of all, I use a double boiler approach. 1, the heat source is not necessarily direct flame, but rather the heated water. Secondly, I gradually work the heat up only to the melting point of the wax. I do not go near water boiling temperatures. Overheating the mixture can also impact the curing ability of the finish. At no point should the mixture be emitting any visible vapors, and definitely not smoking. Also, while you can't see it, I do have a lid and a fire blanket nearby. If there was an incident, specifically with oil fires, it's best to cover the fire to put it out or use an oil fire grade fire extinguisher, which I also have. Never try to put out an oil fire with water. Ever.
You don't want putting water? Mama! Mama!
So after heating each mixture and letting them cool for a day, I labeled them 1 through 5. You will also notice that aside from labeling 1 through 5, I also use different colored tape to help visually represent the various percentages of each of the can's ingredients. Green for wax, blue for polyurethane, and orange for boiled linseed oil. Starting with number 1, we have a 3-way split between the 3 ingredients, 10 ounces for each. I figured this would be a good starting point to gauge the other mixtures. Let's open it up. Interesting. Looks nice. Not too thick, not too runny. Kind of the consistency of applesauce. This first one seems to look most like my random experiments in the past. If I had to compare it to anything, it kind of looks like Cody's oil. For the second one, we have 25% wax, 50% poly, and 25% boiled linseed oil. So 7.5 ounces of wax and BLO and 15 ounces of poly. For the second one, I wanted to make sure that I had a sample that had a majority of poly. The more poly you have, of course, will lend to a stronger cure, but you also need to make sure that you have enough of the other 2 ingredients to make it supple enough, therefore easy to apply. Looking at the consistency, it almost looks like polyurethane. Maybe a little thinner. This one out of all 5, I think looks closest to Rubio Monaco. And for number 3, I wanted to equal out the amount of poly and wax. So I have BLO at 25%, and then I split the difference between poly and wax at 37.5%. So 11.25 ounces for the wax and poly, and 7.5 ounces for BLO. I was a little surprised at the consistency of number 3. It has a greater percentage of wax than the other 2, but it's thinner than number 1 and maybe only a little thicker than number 2. With number 4, I went heavier on the wax content, 50% wax and 25% for poly and boiled linseed oil. So 15 ounces of wax and 7.5 ounces of poly and BLO. Again, more wax here, but looks almost identical to number 1. Maybe a little thicker. Number 5, I kept the same amount of wax as number 4, but increased the proportion of poly. So 50% wax, 35% poly, and 15% boiled linseed oil, which is 15 ounces of wax, 10.5 ounces of poly, and 4.5 ounces of BLO. Wow, super thin. You know, the varied consistencies have me a little confused, a little nervous. For one thing, I know wax can be tempered, and I did not account for the temperatures I brought each can to, nor did I control the way that they cooled off. Who knows, I'm sure there's other things that I'm not taking into consideration either. Well, time for testing. Now, I actually waited another 3 days from that last shot before I started testing these mixtures. And you may note that the consistency in at least 2 of these mixtures, 1 and 4, has changed rather drastically. They got real thick. This brought to my mind the question of shelf life. Will these mixtures continue to thicken, dry out even? It's something that I end up considering in this video, but that answer will have to wait till later, since the only way to test shelf life is to wait. As you can see, I have 3 different types of wood to test these 5 finishes. I chose 2 hardwoods, maple and walnut, light and dark, and I also chose some old growth pine for the softwood. This first test is to assess ease of application. I want to make sure that there is good absorption and the finish is not too sticky when applying. Hard wax oil finish should be applied by rubbing the compound in the wood fibers. You leave the finish on for a while and then wipe or buff off the excess. The hard wax oil finish should cure full in a few days, leaving a natural but relatively strong finish. So, with that being said, it should be 1, easy to apply, soak into the wood easily, and 2, be easy to wipe or buff off. As far as the application goes, they all feel good. No issues, none of them feel sticky, and they seem to work into the wood pretty well. And as far as absorption goes, looks good. You can tell where the wood absorbed the finish really well. This is about 15 minutes after application, and another important factor is that the excess is still workable. When I go to buff, I don't want the excess to have dried too much. I want it to come off fairly easily. And looks good, all of them. Pretty surprising so far. I thought for sure that the poly-heavy mixtures would settle up too much. Alright, so this is after I buffed off all the excess. Looking good. All the areas have a decent sheen. Really just what you want to see. Now all I have to do is let it dry. Okay, so it's been about 14 hours since I put on the first coat. And since then, there's actually been some significant results where I know I don't even have to try a second coat to experiment further, at least with this batch. The one that is definitely the best so far is number 2. And that kind of threw me off. For some reason, I thought that the higher majority wax combinations would work out the best. I took off all the excess I could before letting it sit overnight. But just grazing my fingernail over, for example, number 5, there's still quite a bit of residue left over. So the wax was just basically sitting on top of the wood. And they all look fairly good. It all brings out the iridescence of the wood. But number 2 There's absolutely no residue, and it definitely seems the hardest at this point. So it was able to absorb very nicely. There was no streaks left. And this surprised me, but I don't think it should have, because number 2 had the greatest majority of polyurethane within it. It makes sense now. I think the goal in making a finish that is both durable and also easy to apply lies in having enough polyurethane where it's allowed to be durable and soak in the wood, but enough boiled linseed oil and wax to make it supple enough for easy application, right? Because if I was going to try to apply the polyurethane just as polyurethane the way that I did, with rubbing it in and whatnot, it wouldn't work out, right? It would be too tacky, it'd be too sticky. It wouldn't sit well within the wood fibers. It wouldn't penetrate that deeply. And so I like number 2 quite a bit. It's working fairly well, but I think I can do a little bit better. I would like a little bit more hardness, and of course that lies within the polyurethane. So I'm thinking of doing a batch number 6, this time with a little bit more polyurethane, a little bit less wax, and probably quite a bit less boiled linseed oil. So currently number 2 is 25% wax or paste, 50% polyurethane, and 25% boiled linseed oil. I really want to see if I can do even better by increasing the polyurethane mixture. So I'm thinking of maybe a 20% paste to a 70% polyurethane and a 10% BLO mixture. It's aggressive, but I think at least if I go aggressive and if it's too tacky, if it kind of mitigates the ease of absorption or the ease of application, then I'll know that the perfect finish lies somewhere in between that mixture and the next one that I'm going to make. Let's find out. That's right, a 6th mixture. I'm going to be making it the same way and then make a direct comparison to number 2 on this piece of sapele. I know technically this wood is pronounced sapele, but I'm not doing that. Application's good. Looks nice after wiping off the excess, and here it is after drying. Now this time I'm going to lightly sand and add a second coat for both sides. And after I let it dry again, we can compare. On camera, it's hard to tell much of a difference. They both look really nice. They have a similar sheen, but I can tell that number 6 seems a little more even and I think has a little bit more durability. So I guess we have a winner. With number 6 coming out on top, I will use a larger piece of sapele. Went a little heavy on the first application there. I'll use at least 3 coats this time. And on the last coat, as you see here, I'm going to buff it off using my orbital sander, using a scrap of cotton shirt. Nice. That's exactly how you want it to look after application and buffing. And after a day or so, this is the final product. Looks great. Application was easy, looks natural with a nice even sheen. I think this is it. I think number 6 is the winner. We're done. I did it. I came up with the perfect mixture for a DIY hard wax oil. Or did I? Did I really find the perfect mixture? To be honest, at the time, I believed I did. And I was ready to call it, but directly after filming those last shots, I had to move to Texas. And that gave me a lot of time to think about my various experiments. I wondered if I really found the most effective ratio for these 3 ingredients. I guess I wanted to make sure that I took this experiment as far as I could. Maybe I could make a batch that was more durable than number 6. So I made 2 more. number 7, and number 8. So I guess it's time for another head-to-head comparison. Okay, well, first of all, let's look back at number 6. To recall, number 6 is a 20% mixture of wax, 70% poly, and 10% boiled linseed oil. It's been several months since I made this batch, so this is a good opportunity to look into shelf life. Interesting. Very interesting. It looks quite a bit different, almost gel-like. I'm actually pretty excited about this observation. It seems to have settled into a pretty viable consistency. I was worried that the mixture might either separate or a large portion of the can would dry out, maybe develop a thin, dried up top layer, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's a good thing that I'm testing new mixtures against this one, because now we can test if after several months this finish actually still acts the same way when it was first created. Okay, now let's take a look at number 7, which is 15% wax, 50% poly, and 35% BLO mixture. This can has a higher ratio of boiled linseed oil, higher at least than previous mixtures. Interested to see how it turns out. Pretty thin, that's expected, especially with that increase in BLO. Number 8 is not too far off from number 7. 10% wax, 60% poly, and 30% boiled linseed oil. Also pretty thin. Well, let's test them out. Here I've got 3 coaster-sized pieces of Sable. Application of number 6 is still great. Very supple, not sticky, good absorption. After applying number 6, number 7 is surprisingly thin. Almost too thin. It absorbs very quickly. It kind of reminds me of lacquer, which worries me a little bit. If it's this thin, then like lacquer, it may require several more coats to build a finished layer than a standard hard wax oil would. Number 8's similar to number 7, but I can tell it's not disappearing as much into the wood like number 7. Okay, so they've been sitting over 30 minutes now, and I'm going to just wipe off the excess for this first coat. I'm definitely going to do a few more coats because I can tell for sure number 7 is going to need it. So this is after they've dried for a day. With only 1 coat so far, number 6 is looking okay. Probably would need a second coat, but number 7 and number 8 both look a little too natural. It's obvious that they have oil penetration in the wood fibers, but I am not seeing an even protective sheen. That would be standard for a hard wax oil finish. So time for a second coat. This time I'm using a white application pad to work in the finish as much as possible. This is after the pieces have been sitting for a while. You can tell how much wetter number 7 and number 8 are compared to number 6. And I'm wiping off the excess again, trying a little hand buff while I'm at it. Now that the second coat has been applied, it's pretty obvious to see that number 6 has taken on an even protective layer, almost like a bit of a top coat. Number 7 and 8 are a different story. The oil has brought out the iridescence of the wood very well, but you can tell that the finish has kind of a brighter sheen on only certain parts of the wood grain. It seems as though the finish has only had a chance to sit on some of the less porous parts of the wood. Now, number 8 is a little better than number 7, and I would even say for the parts of number 8 that has taken the finish well, it has a more glossy sheen than number 6. To give these finishes their fair shake, I think I should do a third coat. Now, a lot of popular hard wax oil finishes claim that you only need 1 coat for the finish, and at the most 2. So by having to do a third coat, we're kind of straying from one of the principles of a hard wax finish: ease of use and application. But since this is an experiment, I think we can humor ourselves. So once again, I've applied the finish and let it set. The only difference this time is I will use my orbital sander and a scrap of cotton shirt to give this third coat a good buffing. Okay, it's been a few days, and this is definitely the best these pieces have looked. Number 6 looks good. You can tell that the finish is applied very evenly over the grain of the wood. It has a really nice even sheen. 7 looks better, but still has the same problems. If we glance the light a certain way, you can tell where the finish hasn't built up enough. It's not as even as number 6 for sure. 8, however, looks much better. The finish looks more even, and I would say glossier than number 6. You could say 8 has a more pleasant look, but I don't think it necessarily makes an overall better comparison to a hard wax oil. Again, if I use number 8, it will take at least 3 coats to get a good result. So far, I'm still leaning toward number 6. Yet, it may be worth testing the durability of these finishes. Maybe number 8's higher sheen reflects a stronger finish. In the Lincoln Street video, John tested the various hard wax finishes with a liquids test. He used liquids such as coffee, Gatorade, wine, and hot sauce, and let them sit on the finished wood for 30 minutes and made comparisons. I am going to try to replicate that. I'll take each of the 3 coasters here and divide them 4 ways with this orange tape. Yes, I've let these finishes cure. It's been more than a week since the last coat. Now I will carefully apply a specific amount of coffee, then wine, then Gatorade, and of course hot sauce. Now John also used a sweaty cup and used crayon for his testing. I just ran out of space, and this test really is just to see if this is at least a viable product, so I'm just going to be doing the liquids test. Now John from Lincoln Street had some really interesting results, a very wide array of outcomes. There were 3 that came out on top of the liquids test. I think it was Fitties, Osmo, and Bumbleshoots. Though each of the brands had at least 1 liquid that showed up, my results turned out pretty good. As you can see here, I started with number 8, and I'm not really seeing any stains or watermarks. Pretty similar results for number 7. Maybe you can tell a little dry area from the hot sauce, but it's really not that discernible. And of course, number 6 did really well. Now, I did not use a lighter wood as well in this experience, so maybe the darker tone of the sable is not showing a stain, but I really cannot tell a difference in the sheen of the finish. Am I not seeing this right? I don't know. You tell me. Am I being too generous with my product here? Now, regardless, if there's not much a difference between the 3 finishes after the liquids test, then I'm defaulting back to number 6 as the best finish so far. And I'm really not upset that we tested the other 2 finishes, because it gave us a chance to actually test the shelf life of number 6, and it seems to perform just as well as when it was first made. Now, I want to say that I am not by any means trying to say that this DIY finish is superior to regular high-end hard wax oil finish brands. This has not been a lot of testing, and I don't think, again, we can really say that in a true sense this is a hard wax oil finish. I just wanted to know if what I've been making is comparable. And I would have to say my answer is yes, in terms of application, looks, and durability. But what about cost? Well, John, in his video, he already broke down the cost of 9 hard wax oil brands by milliliter, with the cheapest coming in at 7 cents per milliliter. And I did the math on mine. I took what it cost me to purchase the 3 ingredients and broke down the pricing of the specific amounts that went into number 6. And turns out that it cost me 2 cents per milliliter to make my own finish. And I find that pretty significant. You know, it depends, of course, on the individual to gauge whether or not that price difference is worth the effort in making their own finish. On myself, I think it does. I like DIYing in general, and the great thing about this process is that you can make a lot of the number 6 finish. Like several quarts, maybe a gallon even, from the original ingredients. Much more than what the big brands offer in any singular pricing. Also, there's no reason necessarily to say that number 6 actually is the perfect recipe. What's great about this process is that you can add more or less of these ingredients to make a finish for a wide range of projects. I actually use a higher amount of boiled linseed oil for a specific mixture for my workbench finish. And the point is, you really have the flexibility to really customize depending on what your project is. And my greatest hope in all of this is that you've at least found this video interesting, and maybe in the end it'll save you $1 or $2. If so, please consider liking and subscribing. For those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much for supporting this new channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.